This hospital doesn't provide free treatment to people who can't pay. Please go to the county clinic.
The old man stood outside the hospital's automatic glass doors, clutching his chest as rain poured over his worn jacket. His shoes were soaked, his gray beard dripped with water, and every breath came slower than the last. People rushed past him. Some looked. Most didn't. Then a young woman in a spotless white coat walked toward the entrance, holding a tablet while several nurses followed behind her. She glanced at the old man for barely a second. "I'm sorry," she said firmly. "This hospital doesn't provide free treatment to people who can't pay. Please go to the county clinic." The old man slowly lifted his eyes toward her. His lips trembled. "Sophia." The young doctor's face stiffened. She looked at him as though he were a complete stranger. "I don't know you." The old man lowered his head. "I was only hoping." Before he could finish, security gently escorted him away. What no one, not the doctors, not the nurses, not even Sophia, knew was that within the next 15 minutes, the entire hospital would discover they had just turned away the man whose name was engraved on the very building they worked in. If you've ever seen someone judged because of how they looked, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Stories like this remind us that appearances can hide extraordinary truths. Downtown Atlanta was waking up like every other Monday morning. Traffic stretched for blocks. Sirens echoed through the streets. Coffee shops overflowed with office workers. Standing proudly in the center of the city was Johnson Memorial Medical Center, one of the most respected private hospitals in Georgia. Inside, everything moved with military precision. Doctors hurried through the corridors. Nurses checked patient charts. Wheelchairs rolled across polished marble floors. Every second mattered. Among the hospital's rising stars was Dr. Sophia Johnson, a 32-year-old Black American physician known for her intelligence, confidence, and relentless ambition. She had graduated at the top of her class. Completed one of the country's toughest residency programs. Published medical research before turning 30. Many believed she would become the hospital's youngest chief medical officer. Patients admired her confidence. Executives admired her discipline. Junior doctors feared disappointing her. To most people, Sophia represented success. But success had slowly changed her. Years earlier, she had been compassionate. Now she believed one thing above everything else. Emotion clouds judgment. She repeated those words almost every day. She believed hospitals had to run like businesses. Efficiency. Profitability. Standards. Anything that threatened those standards had no place inside her world. Even if it involved people. Across town, an old city bus stopped beside a small neighborhood diner. An elderly black man stepped off carrying nothing but a faded canvas bag. His name was Benjamin Johnson. He was 70 years old. His clothes were simple. His coat had been stitched together so many times that the original fabric was barely visible. To anyone passing by, Benjamin looked like another retired man struggling to survive. No expensive watch. No luxury car. No bodyguards. Nothing suggested wealth. Yet Benjamin smiled at everyone he met. He greeted the bus driver. Held the door open for a young mother pushing a stroller. Even bought breakfast for a homeless veteran using the little cash visible in his wallet. People thanked him. Benjamin simply nodded and continued walking. No one recognized him. That was exactly how he preferred it. For nearly 5 years, Benjamin had quietly traveled around Atlanta without revealing who he really was. He wanted to see how ordinary people were treated when no one believed they had influence. Sometimes he visited schools. Sometimes nursing homes. Sometimes restaurants. Today, he chose the hospital. Not because he wanted to test anyone. Because he wasn't feeling well. For several weeks, a sharp pain had settled across his chest. His longtime personal physician had repeatedly urged him to come in for tests. Benjamin finally agreed. But instead of arriving in one of the luxury vehicles waiting at his estate, he insisted on taking public transportation. His assistant had argued with him. "Mr. Johnson, at least let security accompany you." Benjamin smiled. If kindness only appears when people know your name, then it isn't kindness. His assistant sighed. "You've always believed that." And I always will. Meanwhile, inside Johnson Memorial Medical Center, a board meeting was already underway. Hospital executives reviewed financial reports, insurance contracts, expansion projects, future investments. One board member asked a simple question. When will Mr. Johnson return from Europe? The hospital president adjusted his glasses. No one knows. He hasn't attended a board meeting in nearly 3 years. Has anyone spoken with him? He still refuses. Several executives exchanged nervous looks. Although Benjamin Johnson rarely appeared publicly, everyone respected him. He had founded Johnson Memorial Medical Center more than 35 years earlier after his wife died because a small rural hospital lacked proper equipment. That loss changed his life forever. He promised no family would lose someone simply because quality healthcare wasn't available. He invested everything. Built hospitals. Funded scholarships. Opened free medical outreach centers. Within decades, Johnson Memorial became one of the nation's leading healthcare networks. Yet Benjamin never placed giant portraits of himself inside the buildings. He believed hospitals should celebrate healing, not founders. Only a handful of senior executives knew what he looked like today. Time had changed him. Age had changed him. Even his closest employees would struggle to recognize him. Back outside, Benjamin reached the hospital entrance. The chest pain returned. Stronger. He paused. Placed one hand against the wall. His breathing became uneven. Nearby visitors noticed but assumed he was simply tired. Benjamin slowly entered the lobby. The polished marble reflected bright morning light. Elegant flower arrangements decorated the reception area. Everything looked perfect. Except the men standing alone near the entrance. A receptionist glanced up. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" Benjamin smiled politely. "No, but I think I need to see a doctor." She looked him up and down. "Insurance?" Benjamin hesitated. "I'd rather discuss that after someone checks my condition." "I'm sorry, sir. Our policy requires registration before treatment unless it's a confirmed emergency." Benjamin nodded. "I understand." Before he could explain further, a familiar voice echoed across the lobby. "Clear the hallway, please." Staff immediately stepped aside. Dr. Sophia Johnson walked confidently toward the elevators with 2 residents behind her. She was reviewing patient files without looking up. Benjamin watched her. Something about her smile. The way she carried herself. It reminded him of someone. Then she looked directly at him. For just a second. Their eyes met. Benjamin whispered almost to himself. "My little girl." She frowned. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" Benjamin took a slow step forward. "Sophia." Her expression immediately became guarded. "Sir, have we met before?" Benjamin opened his mouth. Then another wave of chest pain interrupted him. He winced. A nearby nurse instinctively moved to help. Sophia raised one hand. "Wait." She turned back toward Benjamin. "If you're seeking treatment, registration is over there." Benjamin looked into her eyes. Eyes he hadn't seen in years. Would she recognize him? Or had success buried every memory of the men who had sacrificed everything to give her the life she now enjoyed? The answer was only moments away. Benjamin pressed one hand against his chest as another sharp wave of pain swept through his body. A young nurse instinctively stepped toward him. "Sir, are you all right?" Before she could reach him, Dr. Sophia Johnson spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Jessica, finish preparing room 12. I'll handle this." The nurse hesitated. "But, doctor, he doesn't look well." Sophia glanced at Benjamin, then at the growing line of patients waiting to check in. "We have several scheduled surgeries this morning. Registration comes first. We can't ignore hospital policy every time someone walks in." Benjamin didn't argue. He simply nodded. "I understand." There was no anger in his voice. Only disappointment. He had spent decades building hospitals so that people could receive care with dignity. Hearing those words inside one of his own facilities weighed heavily on him, not because he expected special treatment, but because he knew how frightened someone in his position could feel. Sophia returned to her tablet. If you're experiencing chest pain, the receptionist will guide you through the admission process once your paperwork is complete. Benjamin managed a faint smile. I appreciate your time, doctor. As he slowly turned away, another intense pain forced him to grab a nearby chair to steady himself. Several people in the waiting area watched nervously. A little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. Mom, why isn't anyone helping that grandpa? His mother quietly pulled him closer. I don't know, sweetheart. Across the lobby, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She hurried over with a wheelchair. Sir, please sit down. Benjamin smiled gratefully. Thank you. Before he could lower himself into the chair, Sophia looked over again. Jessica. The young nurse froze. We've discussed this. Every patient must follow the admission process unless the emergency team has officially activated a code. Jessica reluctantly stepped back. I'm sorry, sir. Benjamin looked at her kindly. Never apologize for wanting to help someone. Those words lingered in Jessica's mind. Upstairs, the hospital board meeting was reaching its conclusion. Hospital President Marcus Ellison reviewed the agenda. The final item concerns preparations for the Founder Recognition Gala next month. One executive laughed. Do you think Mr. Johnson will finally attend? Marcus smiled. I've stopped trying to predict Benjamin Johnson. He could walk through those front doors today dressed like a janitor, and half this hospital wouldn't recognize him. The room erupted in laughter. None of them realized how close that joke was to the truth. Outside the hospital entrance, rain continued to fall. Benjamin slowly made his way toward a bench beneath the covered walkway. His breathing had become more labored. He reached into his coat pocket and removed a small photograph. It showed a much younger Benjamin standing beside a smiling little girl wearing oversized school shoes. On the back, written in faded ink, were the words, "My first day of school. Daddy promised he'd always protect me." Benjamin gently smiled. So much has changed. Years earlier, Sophia had dreamed of becoming a doctor because she watched her mother lose a battle with illness. Benjamin had worked 3 jobs to pay for her education. He missed birthdays, skipped vacations, sold valuable property. He never complained. Every sacrifice was worth seeing his daughter wear a white coat. But after medical school, life became complicated. Sophia accepted a position overseas for several years. Benjamin spent more time expanding the hospital foundation. Their conversations became less frequent. Then almost stopped. Neither of them intended for the distance to grow. It simply did. The last time they spoke face-to-face had been nearly 6 years earlier. Benjamin had aged considerably since then. His beard had turned completely gray. His posture had changed. Without his tailored suits and polished appearance, he looked like an ordinary retiree. Perhaps that was why Sophia hadn't recognized him. Or perhaps she had become too busy looking past people instead of at them. Inside the emergency department, Jessica couldn't stop thinking about the old man. She quietly approached Sophia. Doctor. Yes. I know policy is important. Sophia continued reading a patient chart. But I really think that gentlemen should be examined. Sophia sighed. Jessica, compassion is essential in medicine. But compassion must work alongside procedure. If we abandon one rule, we create confusion for everyone. Jessica nodded respectfully. I understand. Yet something still felt wrong. Back outside, Benjamin suddenly leaned forward. His breathing became shallow. A maintenance employee named Harold rushed over. Sir. Benjamin tried to answer but struggled to speak. Harold immediately grabbed his radio. I need medical assistance at the front entrance. Elderly male in distress. Within seconds, several nurses hurried outside. Jessica was among them. She immediately checked Benjamin's pulse. It's weak. She looked toward the lobby. Get Dr. Johnson. Sophia arrived moments later. The sight before her immediately changed the atmosphere. Benjamin's condition had clearly worsened. This was no longer someone asking for routine care. This was a genuine medical emergency. Without hesitation, Sophia knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" Benjamin slowly opened his eyes. He looked directly at her. For a brief moment, emotion filled his face. He whispered just loudly enough for her to hear. "I'm proud of you." Sophia frowned. "What did you say?" Before he could repeat himself, he lost consciousness. The entire entrance fell silent. "Get him inside," Sophia ordered. Doctors and nurses rushed Benjamin through the emergency doors. Jessica glanced at the faded photograph that had slipped from Benjamin's pocket onto the wet pavement. She picked it up. At first, it looked like an ordinary family picture. Then she noticed the young girl's face. Her heart skipped. She looked toward Sophia. Then back at the photograph. The resemblance was unmistakable. Jessica whispered to herself. "That little girl." She turned the picture over. The faded handwriting read, "My first day of school. Daddy promised he'd always protect me. Sophia." Jessica's eyes widened. Before she could process what she had discovered, a convoy of black luxury SUVs rolled into the hospital driveway. Every vehicle carried the same silver emblem. Hospital security immediately straightened their posture. Valets stopped what they were doing. Executives inside the lobby turned toward the entrance. Hospital President Marcus Ellison stepped outside, his expression suddenly filled with urgency. He wasn't looking at the building. He wasn't looking at the arriving vehicles. He was searching for one person. And when he saw the unconscious elderly man being rushed through the emergency doors, the color drained from his face. He whispered in disbelief. "Mr. Johnson." Everything inside the hospital was about to change. The emergency room became a blur of movement. Doctors rushed around Benjamin Johnson's bed while machines monitored every heartbeat. "Blood pressure is dropping. Prepare the cardiac team. Get the ECG ready." Dr. Sophia Johnson immediately took charge. "Let's stabilize him first. We can determine the cause once he's responding." No one questioned her authority. Within minutes, Benjamin's condition began to improve. Just outside the treatment room, Hospital President Marcus Ellison arrived, flanked by several board members. Unlike his usual composed demeanor, he looked deeply shaken. He turned to the charge nurse. "How long has Mr. Johnson been here?" The nurse hesitated. "About 20 minutes. Marcus frowned. "And no one contacted me. We didn't know who he was." Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment. "I was afraid of that." Meanwhile, Jessica stood silently in the hallway, still holding the old photograph. Her hands trembled. She looked at Sophia through the glass window as the doctor carefully adjusted Benjamin's oxygen mask. Jessica whispered to herself. "She really doesn't know." One of the senior executives noticed the photograph. "Where did you get that?" It fell from his pocket. The executive looked at it and immediately recognized the little girl. He had seen that picture years ago inside Benjamin's private office. His face turned pale. "Oh, my goodness." Inside the treatment room, Benjamin slowly regained consciousness. The first face he saw was Sophia's. She offered a reassuring smile. "You're safe now." Benjamin smiled weakly. "I knew you wouldn't let me die." Sophia nodded professionally. "We'll continue monitoring you." Benjamin looked at her for a long moment. "You've become an excellent doctor." Something about the way he spoke unsettled her. It felt personal. Familiar. Yet she couldn't explain why. Before she could ask another question, Marcus entered the room. The moment he saw Benjamin awake, relief flooded his face. He walked directly to the bedside. "Mr. Johnson." Benjamin smiled. "Marcus." Without hesitation, Marcus gently took Benjamin's hand. "I'm so sorry this happened." Sophia looked up in confusion. "You know him." Marcus slowly turned toward her. His expression changed from relief to disbelief. "You mean?" He stopped speaking. You don't recognize him. Sophia frowned. Should I? The room became completely silent. Marcus looked from Benjamin back to Sophia. Then quietly asked, Dr. Johnson, when was the last time you saw your father? Sophia blinked. My father passed away years ago. Benjamin slowly closed his eyes. The words pierced him more deeply than any illness. Marcus looked stunned. No, he didn't. Sophia laughed nervously. There must be some misunderstanding. Marcus stepped aside. He pointed toward the patient lying in the hospital bed. There is your father. For several seconds, no one moved. Sophia stared at Benjamin. Then laughed again. No. She shook her head. That's impossible. My father wasn't. She stopped herself. Benjamin gently finished the sentence. Poor. Tears gathered in his eyes. I suppose that's what I look like today. Sophia felt the room spinning. She looked closer. Really looked. The shape of his eyes. The tiny scar above his eyebrow from an old fishing accident. The gentle smile. Memories she hadn't thought about in years suddenly came rushing back. A little girl sitting on her father's shoulders at the county fair. A man teaching her how to ride a bicycle. A father cheering louder than anyone at her medical school graduation. Her knees weakened. Dad. Benjamin smiled through tears. Hello, pumpkin. Only one person had ever called her that. Sophia covered her mouth. No. The tears came instantly. She slowly stepped backward. This can't be happening. Jessica quietly handed Sophia the old photograph. Sophia looked down. It was the picture from her first day of school. She remembered taking it. She remembered writing those words herself. Daddy promised he'd always protect me. Sophia could barely breathe. Her hands trembled as she stared at the men lying in the hospital bed. The men she had turned away. The men she hadn't recognized. The men who had sacrificed everything so she could become the doctor she was today. Tears streamed down her face. Dad. Benjamin smiled gently. I've missed you, pumpkin. Sophia fell to her knees beside the bed. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Benjamin slowly reached out and held her hand. I know. No, Sophia cried. Please don't say that. I judged you. I looked at your clothes instead of your condition. I forgot why I became a doctor. Benjamin looked at her with the same kindness he had shown her since she was a little girl. We all lose our way sometimes. The room remained silent. Doctors, nurses, executives, and hospital staff watched the emotional reunion. Many wiped tears from their eyes. Hospital President Marcus Ellison quietly stepped forward. There is something everyone here deserves to know. He turned toward the gathering crowd. 35 years ago, Mr. Benjamin Johnson built this hospital after losing his wife because she couldn't receive medical care in time. The hallway became still. He gave away much of his fortune to build hospitals that would treat people with dignity. Every scholarship, every free clinic, every community outreach program you see in this organization exists because of him. The employees looked at Benjamin with newfound respect. Marcus continued. For the last 5 years, Mr. Johnson has quietly visited his hospitals dressed as an ordinary citizen. Not to embarrass anyone. Not to trap anyone. He simply wanted to understand how patients experience the care we provide. Several staff members lowered their heads. Benjamin spoke softly. I've met wonderful people in every hospital. He looked toward Jessica. Nurses who never forgot compassion. Then he looked at Harold, the maintenance worker. Employees who stopped what they were doing to help someone in need. Harold smiled shyly. I was only doing what anyone should do. Benjamin nodded. That's exactly why it matters. He turned back to Sophia. I wasn't hurt by the fact that you didn't recognize me. Sophia looked down. I was hurt because you stopped seeing people. Those words settled over the room. No one spoke. Because everyone knew he was right. 3 months later. Johnson Memorial Medical Center looked different. Not because the building had changed. Because the people inside had. Sophia requested a meeting with the board of directors. Standing before the executives, she spoke with complete honesty. I made a mistake. I followed policy, but I forgot that policy should never replace humanity. I take full responsibility. The room remained silent. Marcus finally asked, "What do you recommend?" Sophia had spent weeks preparing her answer. No patient with signs of a potentially life-threatening condition should ever wait for financial paperwork before receiving an initial medical assessment. She paused. We can verify insurance later. We cannot recover lost time. The board unanimously approved the new policy. From that day forward, every employee, from physicians to receptionists to security officers, received additional training focused on treating every person with dignity, regardless of appearance or financial status. A new plaque was placed inside the hospital lobby. It didn't mention profits. It didn't list awards. It simply read, "Every person who walks through these doors deserves compassion before judgment." Benjamin chose the words himself. Sophia changed too. She no longer hurried past patients in the lobby. She greeted the janitors by name. She thanked the cafeteria staff. She made time to speak with worried families instead of rushing away. One afternoon, a homeless veteran arrived at the emergency entrance wearing worn-out clothes and carrying everything he owned in a single backpack. The receptionist looked uncertain. Before anyone else could respond, Sophia walked over with a warm smile. "Welcome." She gently helped him into a wheelchair. "We're going to take care of you." Jessica smiled from across the room. She knew exactly why things had changed. Benjamin recovered well. Although his doctors advised him to slow down, he continued visiting hospitals around the country. Only now, he sometimes invited Sophia to join him. Together they would sit quietly in waiting rooms, watching how patients were treated. Occasionally, Benjamin would ask, "What do you notice?" Sophia always answered differently. But one response became her favorite. "I notice people." Benjamin would smile. "That's the doctor I always believed you could become." 1 year later, the hospital hosted its annual Founder Recognition Gala. For the first time in years, Benjamin agreed to attend. Hundreds of employees filled the grand ballroom. When Benjamin walked onto the stage, everyone stood and applauded. He accepted the ovation with humility before stepping to the microphone. "I've been asked many times what the greatest achievement of my life has been." He looked toward Sophia, seated in the front row. "People assume it's this hospital." He smiled. "It isn't. They assume it's the foundation. It isn't. My greatest achievement." He paused. "Is seeing my daughter become the kind of doctor who treats every patient with compassion, whether they're wearing a business suit or a worn-out coat." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. The audience rose to its feet once again. This time, they weren't applauding a billionaire. They were honoring a father whose greatest lesson wasn't about wealth. It was about humanity. We never truly know the story someone is carrying. The person standing in worn-out clothes may have changed countless lives. The quiet stranger may be someone's hero. Kindness should never depend on appearance, status, or wealth. Because compassion costs nothing, but it can change everything. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes that every person deserves respect. And remember, the greatest measure of character is how we treat people who have nothing to offer us in return.